right. So once again, hi everyone. Thanks again for joining us tonight. For those of you who's just joined, welcome to our show. During the interactive fireside chat tonight, we'll explore how you guys can actually select a great UX bootcamp that can actually help you land a UX job. So that's pretty important too. We have invited an awesome guest speaker today, who is a YouTube influencer and a UX practitioner from Starbucks and has a ton of experience, made quite a few videos about this particular topic, spent a ton of time thinking about this, and basically distilling this into very useful content that gained lots of views. So Wesley will share some insights with us tonight, and also answer lots of your questions. We'll try to get as many questions as possible. Right, so we'll introduce our wonderful guest in just a few minutes. For those of you joining us for the first time, my name is Michael. I'm the founder of a company called BeginX. What it is, it's a part-time UX career accelerator based on real mission-driven client projects that helps people who know UX basics transition into the field in one of the most efficient and affordable ways, and without quitting their jobs. And I don't mean this to brag or anything like that, but just wanted to give you a bit of a background for credibility purposes, of course. So we've run quite a few cohorts so far and helped probably over like 140 people get hired into UX roles. We'll tell you a bit more about our own program closer to the end, and make at the end of the event that is completely optional, of course, and also make a special announcement at the end of the event as well. And by the way, as you may have noticed, of course, we understand that we are biased a little bit, but we've seen so many people completely overwhelmed and confused by this topic that we really wanted to do an event on this particular topic to help you select a bootcamp that is actually the best fit for you. So now let's basically get to the most fun part and introduce our awesome speaker, and then we'll jump into the actual interview. So it's great to have you here once again, Wesley. Thanks again for joining us. Would you like to briefly introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again, Michael, for having me. Excited to be here and to speak in front of you guys. But yeah, I'll just introduce myself real quick. My name is Wesley Hong. I am currently a UX designer working for Starbucks. I am someone who also did a UX bootcamp in order to transitioning into becoming a UX designer. Before my UX journey, I was doing marketing and project management for about 2 years right after college. Decided it wasn't the right career fit for me. Went through a quarter-life crisis at the same time, and thankfully that led me to my journey to becoming a UX designer. And now it's been about 5 years since I started that journey, and it's definitely one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life in terms of career. And I'm just glad to be here and hoping I can just share my experience and my thoughts and my perspective.
Awesome. Great to have you here, Wesley. So I'll facilitate the discussion and might have to interrupt occasionally just to ensure we're on time and we have a chance to answer all those questions from our awesome audience, and basically just give them a chance to ask lots of those questions. For everyone in the audience, so if you have questions, please use the Q&A tab. So this way you can actually upvote others' questions, and we can make sure that we address the most popular ones. And the ones that are many people are interested in, and ideally, so just keep them focused on this particular topic. And also, just a reminder, the career transition roadmap summary handout will be available to download. So just stick around if you'd like to get that. All right. So Wesley, you've already introduced yourself briefly. Anything else you want to share before we jump into the actual bootcamp discussion and stuff like that? About your actual journey and about your experience with bootcamps and just in the UX field in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I can kind of start a little bit about, I guess, how I found out about UX design. So at the time I was working as a project assistant, working for a creative agency. And while I was there, I had a coworker who was a UX designer. And, basically I really had no idea what that meant, what that career looked like. And, basically went up to my coworker, asked her what her day-to-day looked like as a UX designer, what is UX design. And she really just kind of filled me in terms of what her day-to-day looks like and what she does. So there's that aspect. And then I had another friend who was actually in the middle of a UX bootcamp. So at the time, I had no clue what a bootcamp meant. So I decided to pick his brain. Hey, what is a UX bootcamp? What does that entail? What has your journey been so far? And based off of those two things, I kind of just decided that I felt like UX design was the right career pivot for me. So from there, I decided to sign up for a UX bootcamp program. It was called Designation at the time. Sadly, it's no longer around. But for me, it was probably, again, one of the best career experiences that I've had. My bootcamp was about 6 months long. It was a full-time bootcamp. The first 3 months was the online course where there was a live class where we had an actual instructor teaching us the foundations, the ins and outs of both UX and UI design. After that first 3 months of online, the next 3 months, the last 3 months, was an actual in-person phase of the program. The bootcamp itself was located in Chicago. So I had to fly out to Chicago and live there for about 3 months to go through the full-time course. During that time, I would say that my bootcamp, the amount of work that we put into a week, I would say that we worked about 6 days out of the week, about 50 hours a week. And I know that sounds like an exaggeration, but I kid you not. It was a boot camp that really required us to be a full-time student and fully immersed within this program, which, looking back at it, it's something that I really greatly appreciated because being an in-person boot camp, it provided things that, that a lot of boot camps don't really provide. Just to kind of quickly talk about that, it provided the ability to learn with other people immersively. I had fellow classmates where we were all walking the same journey, regardless of our previous experience. We definitely leaned on each other, we supported each other, and we also got to work on a lot of projects together. But the in-person phase specifically, what that provided was the ability to work on real client projects, which is another big bonus for me in that particular bootcamp. To be able to work with a real life client, getting the chance to talk to them, to do kickoff meetings with them, to present designs, defend my design work against them, and for them to provide their own feedback was something that really improved my soft skills as a UX designer right from the get-go. So after doing that for about 3 months for the in-person phase, I finished the program, graduated, and after that, it took me about, I would say, 3 months to find my first UX design job. And that was working for Dick's Sporting Goods out in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where I started working with them as a junior UX designer. I'll just stop right there, but that's just kind of my transition, of how I guess I found out about UX design, how I signed up for the program, and how it looked like going into my first job specifically.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and too bad the designation is no longer on. I know they were like acquired, and then the program was changed quite a bit, et cetera, and then acquired again. But yeah, that was honestly like one of I think one of my favorite programs as well in general in terms of the in-person full-time options. All right, so let's take just a quick step back. So before we jump into the actual bootcamp discussion again, right? In your opinion, Wesley, what do you think makes a highly marketable UX candidate that employers actually really want to hire? I know we covered that a little bit, but I'd love to get your perspective on this.
Yeah, I think as a UX designer, it's very important to be knowledgeable in the UX design process, and to also be able to speak on that in a confident manner. Now, within the UX design process, to be able to really understand that and then share it with other people, I think that's very important because, when people are looking for UX designers, they want to know how you're going to essentially work on this project. They want to know how you're going to solve this problem. They're going to want to know how you came up with the solution. And a lot of that is within the UX process. And I think if you're able to clearly understand that and use that in terms of your framework, that is something that I think people will want to see from you. And they know that, hey, this person, they know exactly what they're talking about. They know the UX design process. They know how to handle these situations and these problems and come up with the right solution. So there's that one aspect. The second thing that really comes to mind is, I think your ability to, your soft skills specifically, the ability to communicate your design effectively. Also, there's the aspect of kind of being able to defend your design work. That's also very crucial. We as designers, we're going to hear a lot of different things about our designs, right? Both the good and the bad stuff. But when you hear any of those things, we have to be able to take that as a constructive feedback and constructive criticism, take that back and decide how we want to move forward. Do we need to stand our ground? Do we need to really advocate for our design? If that's not the case, then is there a way that we can come to a middle ground? So there's definitely a lot of this communication and back and forth that you're going to be doing as a UX designer, especially when it comes to, talking to your business partners and stakeholders. Then there's your product managers and your engineers. So a lot of that soft skills, I think people are really looking for. And, they're going to, during the interview process, they're going to probably ask you a lot of soft skill interview questions, right? They're going to ask you things like, hey, what would you do if you're stuck in this situation, or you're working with a coworker who isn't very helpful? Like, what do you do in those situations? And I think if you're able to communicate that, that's a really good sign for people that, hey, this person right here, this person is going to be a great person to work with, because no matter what situation they're in, I know at the end of the day, we're going to come to the best common ground and we're going to move forward. So that's another thing that really comes to mind specifically.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. That definitely makes a lot of sense. So why do you think people actually look for and sign up for UX bootcamps in the first place?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's, UX design in general has just blown up, I'd say in the past 5 years or so. I think what caused that is the pandemic, number one. I think it really gave everyone the ability to just slow down, right? Wherever they were in their life. It really gave us the time to just sit at home and just kind of reevaluate where we're at, especially within our career. And, with the amount of time we had at home, it gave us the ability to consider career switches. And I felt like UX design was one of those hot trending careers that a lot of people were very interested in. I think the first appeal to it is probably the fact that it's in tech. And right now, the common stereotypes or common things people associate with tech is just, a lot of money. I would say that you do get paid pretty well working within the tech industry. I think there's a second part to people thinking that, that this career is also very creative, which I agree to a certain point. And also the ability to, work with a lot of people, especially if you're like a people person and you get to talk to a lot of different people, empathize with them. That's also another trait that I think people were very attracted to specifically. And then the last thing that I will say is, I think based off of the way that a lot of people or boot camps advertise UX design, to a certain degree, I feel like they made it feel like this career is going to be an easy career switch, which is where I guess I feel a little, I don't feel too good about that, in the sense that how boot camps are kind of stressing that out, because, at the end of the day, just I think with any career switch, it's gonna take a while, right? It's a process. And the way that people explain that it's going to be, hey, you do this boot camp and you're going to get a job after, it may be the case, but not for everybody. So I think there's the idea of just being able to do a career switch really quickly, which I think people need to just, realize that it is a process specifically.
Yeah, definitely. It makes a lot of sense. And I think it's, especially with regards to how easy some boot camps mention it is. And that's kind of my biggest, pet peeve with a lot of them, right? Is, a lot of them can teach you great skills and, basically equip you, but the marketing, over marketing of how easy it is to get a job is just, not that useful to a lot of people, and kind of can leave a lot of people in a pretty, desperate situation. Right. So it's definitely possible, but it requires a ton of effort. Right. We've seen so many people go through this, and it's a lot of work. All right. What do you think, what exactly should potential students look for from a great UX bootcamp? Like, for example, what skills and experience do you think one should be able to gain?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, I think a boot camp that really has a good balance between teaching both the hard skills and the soft skill is very valuable. I think just from what I've gathered and what I've seen with some of these boot camps that are around, I feel like a lot of boot camps really do teach a lot of that hard skill, particularly when it comes to like learning how to use Figma, a Miro board, creating personas, which are all very valuable things to learn as a UX designer. But the soft skills is kind of one of those things that I don't feel a lot of boot camps are really teaching. And that's a really tough thing to teach, right? Because when it comes to like being in situations where you have to defend your designs or possibly debate, your stakeholders about the decision where you go with this product, those are all like things that it's better to learn when you're actually in the actual situation and being in front of someone where you have to go back and forth. And that's a little bit harder to, I guess you could say, replicate, especially if a lot of people are what I would say working on mock projects, or sometimes I call them fake projects, right? Because they're not a real client. It's not, I guess you could also say that it's not really based off of like a real problem specifically to a certain degree. So with that being a problem, I definitely would advise people to look at boot camps. And when you're going through I guess that initial interview process, where a boot camp is trying to sell you on a specific boot camp, I'm pretty sure there's definitely going to be a time where you get to ask questions, right? One of the questions that I would like aspiring UX designers to ask is, hey, what kind of soft skills are you teaching? Or how are you preparing me for clients? How are you preparing me for stakeholders? How are you preparing me to work alongside product managers and engineers? Because, as a UX designer, you are going to be essentially working on a team, right? I think the trifecta is essentially, the PM, the engineers, and then the UX designers. And you do have to work cohesively together, because if you don't, the project will really not move forward. And I think in the center of that is definitely your stakeholder and your business partners, who are also very valuable team members that you do need to get them on board. So I think that's kind of a big key thing to really look for in terms of, I guess, where these boot camps are heading. And then based off of what type of projects you're working on as well. Like, how are these boot camps, really going to help you when it comes to working on a project that might differentiate itself from other boot camps or even from your own classmates, right? Because at the end of the day, if you're coming out of boot camp, just to say there's 20 other people who are your fellow classmates, if all 20 of you guys are working on the same project and all your guys' case studies look exactly the same, it really doesn't help you out, right? Because now they're all looking at all 20 and they all look the same, but they want to look for that one person who they feel is the best for the job specifically. So I think in terms of what type of projects you're working on and the flexibility around that is also very important.
Awesome. Yeah, it makes sense. So, and kind of to piggyback back of that question, if we were to kind of summarize a little bit, what do you think are like the top 5 or 10 criteria, maybe whatever you haven't mentioned already, that one can use to evaluate UX boot camps and programs? Because ultimately, here's what I'm trying to do with this event, is basically to systemize this whole process. It makes it kind of like an easy step-by-step framework that people can use to kind of navigate this whole ocean of boot camps and programs and courses, et cetera.
Could you repeat the question one more time for me?
Yeah, maybe what do you think are like 5 or 10 or whatever, any additional criteria you think one could use to evaluate UX boot camps? And maybe think if, like, let's say if you're making like a spreadsheet or something, right? And you have like hundreds of options, like what would you use to evaluate them? Like what could you actually, which criteria?
Yeah, I think one thing that comes up is when it comes to the project itself, I think if the project consists of you working with other designers, I think that's very valuable. Because sometimes there are boot camps where you get to work on a project, but you're the sole UX designer. And I think I would rather be put into a project where you're working, let's just say, with 2 other UX designers. And this is based off of my own bias experience, because my boot camp, when we were working with the clients and working on these projects, we were put into teams. And I had 2 other UX designers that I was working side by side. The reason I like to bring that up is because, again, it provides you with like a support system, right? You're with two other UX designers who are all trying to, become an official UX designer, and you're going to be there to, number one, support each other. You're going to be there to bounce ideas off of each other, right? And as a learning UX designer, there may be things that you think is right, but could be possibly wrong. So it also has like a little bit of accountability that I think is very important. So, if you had one solution that you're thinking is the best one, and the other two UX designers think it's probably not the best one, it does force you to take a step back and reevaluate the problem and the project that you're working on. And again, this is also you practicing your soft skills, because some of these projects that you're going to work on in real life, again, it's going to consist of other people that you do need to work alongside with. And I think that's kind of one valuable piece that I think is very important with boot camps. I think another part is if some of these boot camps have, I would say, a live class that you can attend, I think that would be better than a class where it's all pre-recorded, right? And then that way you're not able to like talk to your classmates about it. You're not able to ask questions to your instructors. I think finding a boot camp that is willing to spend the time to actually have a live class and teach you right there and then, I think that says a lot about a boot camp. And also just having the chance to, again, having that Q&A. Like if you are confused about what wireframes are and how different that is from a prototype, you should be able to essentially just raise your hand and ask questions on the spot. I think that's another aspect of it as well. I think I know, sorry, I'm just gonna kind of go off the top of my head, but
yeah, no, that's good. It's good. I know it's a complex question, right? Because you can evaluate these on like lots of different criteria.
Exactly. I think the last thing I will say is I think I would try to find a boot camp that has like a set schedule. Just because right now, from what I've seen, there's a lot of boot camps that offer a go at your own pace style. And this is probably just different based off of who you are, whether you're the type of person who needs to, be in like a classroom setting and have to follow like a set schedule, or let's just say you're just like a go-getter and you don't like schedules, right? But the pros of having a set schedule is that you are learning at a good pace with everybody else and working at a good pace with the instructors. So let's just say if it was an at your own pace boot camp and I'm working and I'm in this class with another guy named Bob, right? And the ideal time for you to finish the boot camp is, let's say 4 months, right? I think it's very easy for people to like continually extend the boot camp if it's at your own pace, because you may tell yourself, okay, yeah, like I'm gonna try to finish it at 4 months. Oh, something comes up. All right, I'm gonna push it to another month, and then another month, and another month. And I feel like I've seen that commonly through some of other people's boot camp experiences. I think it's just better to, if you can, fully commit to the boot camp as much as possible and just follow like the set schedule that the boot camp has. So that way you can learn alongside other people. And that way you're also not getting behind as well compared to other people. And to be honest, I think like there's a part where like, if you're just able to learn everything within that 4 months, compared to you spacing everything out from going to 6 months to 8 months to a year, there's a lot of knowledge that may be forgotten, right? It's just better to, be fresh while you're a student and learn as much as you can when you're in that state of mind of being a student and absorb everything, being ready to apply that to, your projects, your case studies, and getting that ready for interviews. So I think that's like a very strong preference that I think I really would suggest for other people is even if you're doing the go at your own pace, like give yourself like a hard deadline and say that I'm going to finish it within this particular month and try not to push that off and off and off, if that makes sense.
Yeah, this is great. Yeah, it's and it definitely is structured, and we'll try to crystallize and kind of summarize what you mentioned in my next question. But yeah, I think it's definitely important to, like, for a lot of people, structure is crucial. Some people can just like go through it. So it depends on your learning style, etc. Right? But for almost anyone, right, if you have a certain set pace, right, and structure and deadlines, we notice that definitely helps a ton. Even if you're a go-getter, that just like accelerates you, right? If you want to basically do it faster. Right?
Yeah,
so it's
absolutely. And just to kind of add on to that a little bit is, yeah, I think it's also very dependent on your learning style. If you're someone that learns better outside of, I guess, structure, and you're someone who, sets your own structure, your own schedule, and your own pace, maybe boot camp is not the right route for you, right? Maybe you can self-teach yourself everything. But if you're not like that and you need structure, you need accountability, you need someone who you think has more experience than you, then I do feel like boot camp is probably then your specific route, and that might be the better option. So it's also very dependent on your learning style and what you think is the best fit for you. For myself, I was the type of person where I was like, oh man, I need an instructor. Oh man, I do need a classroom setting. Oh, and I do need an environment where I'm just always thinking about design, design, design. So it's based off of, I guess, your strong preference and your personality and what you think is the best for you.
Yeah, definitely. And by the way, guys, remember to post your question. I see a couple of questions that we want to take already in Q&A. But yeah, feel free to add those. No question is stupid. We want to address as many of those as possible. Also, meanwhile, feel free to share, like, what's your biggest takeaway so far in the chat, right? So just share, let us know, like, so far, what have you learned already, right? We're not done yet. Still have a little bit, quite a bit of time. But, we want to know what you guys have actually learned so far, and let us know. And meanwhile, so Zena has a question about testimonials. So are testimonials important in choosing the bootcamp? For example, I found offline bootcamp, which I liked, but I couldn't find its UX designer grads on LinkedIn. What do you think?
Very great question. It's surprising because I do talk to a lot of aspiring UX designers who are trying to go to the bootcamp route, and I kind of asked them, hey, like, how are you choosing these boot camps, right? And I guess a part of that question that I do ask on top of that is, like, what research are you doing to find out more about the boot camp itself? Because the boot camp may say that, hey, this is the best boot camp program in the world, or they're going to provide you, the best career phase possible in order for you to get ready for the job market. But you're not going to really know that until you talk to someone who went to the bootcamp specifically. And a lot of the people that I talk to, I don't see them reaching out to the bootcamp grads. And I don't see why they're not doing that, because they're going to be the ones who probably will give you the more honest perspective and opinion about the bootcamp, right? Talk to the people who've gone through the program and, pick their brains. And maybe if that person that you talk to, if they're similar to you, right, like they felt like, hey, the bootcamp was the best path for them, maybe then that gives you the right answer for yourself in deciding whether this bootcamp is the right one, or if the bootcamp journey is the best option for yourself. So it's definitely something that I highly suggest to reach out to as many different networks as possible. I do know that sometimes, like on LinkedIn, yeah, they will add the bootcamp into their resume part of LinkedIn, which is perfect, because I think you can still search that. But if you don't see that, then it might have to be word of mouth through other friends, and how you like put yourself out there and network. Just being able to just talk to any type of bootcamp graduates, I think they may be able to know other people who are in that bootcamp that you specifically want to join. So please try to network with as many people as possible, and trying to get as many different perspectives on the many different boot camps that are out there, because there's just so many.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Wesley. Yeah, and just to add to that, yeah, I think it's not even, if you think about testimonials like in a typical sense, like testimonial, it's something displayed on the site. I mean, yeah, that's important, but it's think about, like, maybe find case studies, ideally, right? Like where the grads actually talk about their experience, kind of what Wesley just mentioned. Reach out to them. Maybe they have any videos, for example, where they actually talk about the experience, or so it's a little bit more in depth, so it's more useful, right? Because it's easy to just like write a testimonial, right? And but it's but definitely reach out to the actual alumni, to the folks that went through it. All right, and Vanetta is saying, so in terms of insights, so soft skills are hard to teach, definitely, and so important. Yeah, definitely, Vanetta. Yeah, that's kind of what I think. It's a great point you took away. So so far, yeah, it's because a lot of soft skills, right? They basically built up through experience, right, and just practice, and like collaborating with the team, collaborating with the clients, the stakeholders. So yeah, that's a great point, Vanetta. All right, let's take another question. So Angela is asking, just curious about how we feel about having UX design mentor as part of the bootcamp program.
Yeah, so with UX design mentors, I think if the bootcamp provides that, awesome. The question that I have with boot camps is, who are these mentors? Like, where are they getting their mentors? Are these mentors recent graduates of the boot camp? Are they alumni? I've always been very curious about the vetting processes that boot camps go through for their particular mentors. Only reason I ask that is because I've heard both good and bad experiences with mentors, and it's all obviously very dependent on who you get paired with. If you get paired with a really good one, they're going to really help you out and walk you through the bootcamp program itself. Maybe there's specific mentors for the career stage where they're going to help you out in terms of figuring out your resume, your case study, your portfolio, and then talking to you about the interview process. So maybe there are mentors that are going to really put themselves out there and be that support that you need. Then there may be other bootcamp mentors who may not put in as much of the work that they probably should. And I think if you're in that situation, you should definitely talk to your bootcamp and probably request a different mentor, because I'm sure they do have a list of many different mentors. Like, do not be afraid to talk to your bootcamp and say whether you want to be honest or not, or even just say things like, hey, this is not the best match for me in this specific mentor, and please help me find another one. But also at the same time, I think if you do get paired with a mentor in some of these boot camps, I really stress the idea that you really have to lead where this mentorship is going to go. As much as the mentor should be there to help and guide you, I also think that the mentees should be there always prepared with lots of questions. Mentees should also come up with a game plan for how they should move forward in the career phase. Like, don't come into these mentorship calls with nothing to bring, right? Like, you also have to be very proactive, especially in the case that if you feel like you're not being paired with a good design mentor who's taking the lead, then you take the lead, see how that works. Because I think to a certain degree, I think it is kind of a 50-50 partnership a little bit, where you shouldn't be spoon-fed all the time, right? Like, you should have your own idea in terms of where you think you're going to go in your career and what you should work on. And I think that also just shows initiative on your end, right? That you're willing to do everything on your part to work with this mentorship. But yeah, I think finding a bootcamp that does provide the mentorship is important. Are all mentors amazing in that particular program? Probably not. And that's for you to figure out on the side, request another one. And one last thing is, I had another bootcamp student reached out to me, and she told me that, hey, she got paired with a really bad mentor, and then she realized that one of her other classmates got paired with a really good mentor. So basically, she unofficially kind of asked that other mentor to be her unofficial mentor. So there's that idea that, again, she's being like a kind of like a go-getter a little bit, in the sense that she realizes she's not in a good position. She just went to that other mentor and asked to be a part of that person's mentorship. So do what you can on your end as well.
Yeah, this is great. Yeah, lots of great insights. Thank you, Wesley. That's yeah. I think what also comes to mind is make sure that mentor is a good role model, right? So basically, because some people, I think it's a mistake. Some people really want to have that mentor who has like tons of experience, years, and they like a rock star and everything. And it's great. It can be definitely someone very important to interact with. But they may be like much further away from your actual goal, because they accomplished it like 20 years ago or something like that, right? So make sure that you also talk to someone who is like 1 step, 2 steps ahead of you, right? Who basically, let's say they went through this career transition, they landed their first role, right? And they got some experience, right? So those people are usually, the best role models. And yeah, I think also the point about being prepared for mentors is crucial as well. Again, some people make the mistake of just coming to a mentor and kind of just wasting time and basically, okay, here is this whole deliverable. What do you think? I mean, you can think about it for a lot of hours, right? And it's crucial to just be prepared, have like specific exact questions, and what do you want feedback on, etc. So love that there are more questions being posted. Keep them coming. Also, feel free to use the chat to share any additional insights that you guys took away so far. So Wesley, based on what you've seen, what do you think are the main different types of UX bootcamp? All right, so maybe as related to the time commitments, like part-time versus full-time, or self-paced versus cohort-paced, pricing, et cetera. Any ideas in terms of how you would group these into different categories?
Yeah, there's just so many different boot camps out there that have different structures for them, right? And you kind of talked a little bit about all those different parts where, the first thing comes to mind that there is a full-time boot camp, right? Which probably requires you to work as a full-time student, meaning that you have to probably quit your job or can't work as often as within the full-time setting. And then there's the part-time boot camps, right? Where maybe you can do the boot camp, from your 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. And then before that, you're still working as a full-time worker specifically. Nowadays, like, I don't have a strong suggestion for either or for those specifically, because for me, I was put in a very lucky situation where I got to work. I got to go to a boot camp that was full-time, and then I had support from my family members, which was very helpful. But also at the same time, I made a big risky move of taking out, like, I guess you could say, like a boot camp student loan and going through this boot camp. I probably don't recommend that for you just to do that out of the blue, right? But if you can put yourself in a financially stable position in order for you to do a full-time boot camp, I just think you just probably will learn a lot more within a full-time than a part-time. And also they're very dependent on how long these boot camps are as well, because there's some boot camps that say, hey, we'll help you become a full UX designer within 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, 8 months. Like, you hear a lot of these different numbers. And I think one thing that kind of like is a little concerning for me is, there's a lot of these boot camps. Number one, they're all businesses, right? At the end of the day, honestly, they're all competing against each other. But I think when I hear a boot camp telling their prospective students that, hey, we'll help you become a UX designer in 3 months, and that's the quickest out of all these different boot camps, I'm a little concerned with that, just because I don't know how much these boot camps are really cramming everything within that 3 months, or how much they may be like skimming through the UX design process and what they're teaching you. So, and a lot of people will gravitate towards a shorter one because sometimes they may be cheaper. And again, when people are putting it in, they're not in a good financial position or situation, it will go towards that cheaper option. But I think at the end of the day, just because it's cheaper doesn't mean it's better, right? I think that's something that, especially during the pandemic, I felt like everybody was in this desperate position of trying to do their career switch in the quickest way possible. And again, just because it's fast and quick doesn't mean it's going to be a good program. And vice versa. Even if it's like a super long one, it doesn't mean it's good. But I think from my from my experience and from what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing, it does feel like if they have a longer period of time for the boot camp, they're probably going to like start giving you your UX knowledge in a better pace that's probably easily digestible, easily learnable in that kind of manner. So that's another thing that I tell people to look out for, is just because it's cheaper and it's going to be part-time and it's going to be less money, it's probably you need to like really look into like, why you're doing that option and if that's the best one. Now, the other question is, like, let's say there are these boot camps that are, there is a boot camp, right? Let's say it's a boot camp that's 15K, right? And let's just say the average for most of these other boot camps are 10K. If you're looking at this 15K boot camp, you have to ask yourself, like, why is it 15K? Like, why is it $5,000 more than this other one? Like, what are they providing you that some of these other boot camps are not? And I think that's where when you're looking for these boot camps, you really have to do a good competitive analysis in terms of all these different ones. Another thing that I noticed is that when I talk to aspiring UX designers and I ask them how many different boot camps have you looked into, the common answer that I get is like 2 to 3 boot camps. And that to me is a little bit surprising because there's so many where you know, I, I encourage some of these people to look into as many as possible, even though there's so many. But there is going to be that boot camp that's probably best suited for you. But if you're only going to do 2 to 3, like, why aren't you looking at the other boot camps, right? So I definitely suggest to them to do like a full deep competitive analysis. If there is one that's more expensive, what are they offering? Are they more expensive because they offer you real client privilege? And honestly, I think if that's the biggest differentiator, and a lot of these boot camps offer more of the mock fake projects, that 5K may go a long way in terms of picking that particular boot camp, because they're offering you something that a lot of these other boot camps don't. And by working again with like real client, that provides that soft skill that I talked about. So they're for that extra 5K, they're teaching you the soft skills that a lot of these boot camps will not teach you. And I can't stress how important that soft skill is specifically. But again, like, we can go down the rabbit hole of all these boot camps and how they're, different from others. But I think those are kind of the key things that kind of come to mind when I see all these different boot camps that are around today.
Yeah, that's great. And we also like to kind of, to kind of just summarize it, basically look at it part-time versus full-time, online versus offline, or hybrid, right? And basically pandemic kind of mixed everything up. And then those that were just offline became online, or the other, not the other way around, but they became like hybrid. Also self-study or self-paced versus cohort-paced. So that's another big one. Right. So that's kind of what we were talking about earlier. Right. So I know some companies, they basically have like give you access to lots of content, right? But they help you with mentor access. Right. So, and that's like can be fine too for some, like if that model works for you. Right. Or some other ones are basically live, right? So cohort based, right? So it's like a cohort based course, right? Where you have a cohort and you move along a certain pace with others. And that can also be part-time versus full-time, right? The full-time options are great. Basically, I would say like the main advantage is that you just move much faster, right? And you're really focused, right? So the question is, can you actually afford it, especially the opportunity cost, right? If you're already working, right, that means that because what is actually higher is not the tuition itself, but the opportunity cost. If you're working, let's say if you're already in a professional job and you quit for 3 months, and maybe you don't find a role for another 3 months or 6 months, or who knows, especially right now the economy is a bit more challenging, right? So just definitely keeping that in mind as well. And there's also asynchronous, what do you call it? Oh, what we also like to do is focus, kind of divide courses into career transition oriented versus upskilling, right? So don't confuse the two, right? Because there are lots of great courses and they're typically much cheaper, right? That you can just use to learn the basics, right? And they're upskilling oriented, right? You'll gain some skills, but you will not typically land the first role, right? You will not make the transition. There are other ones that are career transition oriented where you get more projects, more case studies, more career practice. Career prep is absolutely huge as well. So hopefully that's a kind of a summary. We actually have a video as well on our site about how to learn UX efficiently. And we have like one slide over there in that video that talks about all these different learning options and how they compare, right? And basically the more support, the more structure, the more live interaction, the more there is, the more expensive the option becomes. But it can be absolutely worth it, right? Because, you may spend more money, but you can save a lot of time, right? And basically getting to your goal 1 year faster means, getting to, that result and that job and that salary 1 year faster, right? Which can be a lot of money as well. All right. So what do you think, Wesley, is a good way? I know you already asked about criteria and we already talked about all these different ways to evaluate, but let's say if you were, I don't want to like rehash the same question, but just add whatever you had said before, because I really want the folks in the audience to get as much insight as possible. Because again, I spoke with so many people, they were absolutely confused, and many of them have no idea how to actually make this decision. So what's a good way to quickly evaluate many boot camps and choose one that is the best fit for them specifically?
How do you, out of all the different boot camps there are, how do you evaluate which one is the best? Yeah, I think like I would say it's very dependent on what stage you are in your life as well, right? Like, are you in a position where you can make like a big time So I mean, I think what I'll say is first is like boot camp, it's a gamble. It's nothing is guaranteed, right? And the question that you're asking yourself is like, what can I do to have the best chance of gambling and getting the best in return? And I think, a lot of it is based off of just how much work that you're willing to do even outside of the boot camp. Because if you decide to sign up for a specific boot camp, right? You're kind of going through the curriculum, you're going through what the instructor is telling you. I think another way that you can, put yourself out there a little bit more and make it more advantageous is definitely doing more work outside of just the boot camp, right? Like do further learning outside of it, like reach out to other, UX designers that are out there specifically who've been working for a certain amount of time. I think that's another big key thing that people should kind of really look into in terms of like gathering your knowledge just outside the bootcamp itself. To answer your question a little bit more specifically, though, I'm sorry, I'm maybe going a little bit tangent, but I think another big thing is, how long have these boot camps been around for, right? So, for example, I know a really well-known boot camp called General Assembly. I'd say they've been around for a really long time, more than most of these other boot camps. And, this boot camp, they have locations all around the world. I know there's GA in Australia. There's GA in different parts of the countries around the world. And what I really like about, their longevity is the fact that like you have access to a huge network of GA alumni. And I think that's also very helpful. Compared to some of these other boot camps, maybe let's just say they've been around a year and they don't have as many boot camp graduates. It's going to be a little bit harder for you to, put yourself out there and reach out to them. And then who knows, maybe you might be connected with another boot camp alumni and you guys kick it off because you guys went to the same boot camp, and that could lead to possibly a job referral or a connection. And if a boot camp has been around that long, I think there's probably a good reason why, right? But the perks about those boot camps is the fact that they do have a huge network, and you can definitely find someone who did graduate from that program. And, you can relate in the sense that you've done the same boot camp, you can pick their brains, right? There's a little bit sense of camaraderie between the two of you already from the get-go. And again, that could always lead to another connection, which then could possibly lead to a job referral, a position that's open. I think that's kind of one thing that I do look at with some of these. I think there's a lot more boot camps out there today that are a little bit more newer and fresh. And I think the community / alumni / networking aspect is also very crucial. Another thing that I'll say is like, with my boot camp specifically, I remember where they had alumni nights where they brought all the alumni together with the current boot camp students, and they would just do like a happy hour together. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's awesome, because they're connecting people with who've already been a UX designer. They've been through this program. They understand exactly what I'm going through as a student. And we're able to just, talk about life, talk about UX design. And that could also potentially lead to a lot of different things later down the line that might be beneficial for you. But that's the thing that kind of comes to my mind right now. And I'll continue to think about your question, Michael. But again, like there's like a lot of different aspects to it that I think there's so much going on that you definitely need to really disperse between all the different stuff that there are and make the right decision for yourself.
Yeah, definitely. I think an idea came to my mind actually is creating some kind of like a bootcamp selector, almost like an app. Doesn't have to be an app. It could just be like a basic diagram or something, step by step, and you kind of look at different criteria. And so far, what I'm kind of hearing, see some of the most important criteria that you mentioned is basically real projects, soft skills, real experience, team collaboration, which kind of rolls under softer skills, structure, especially. I mean, most people benefit from it, even if you don't, some people don't really need it. For some people, it's absolutely crucial. Otherwise, they will not get very far at all. But it can be helpful to most. What else? Career prep is something I think is crucial as well. So I want to take another quick question. Yeah.
Actually, let me talk about that a little bit. That's another great point to bring about. I think if a boot camp offers you a really well structured career phase, I think it's very important. I've talked to a lot of people who've gone through some of these boot camps, and they've gone through what I would say a really bad career phase, where I do think it's important that boot camps really teach you how to, number one, how to create your own portfolio, right? So there's your case study. That's also very important, that you need to know how to create the website that you use. I think also helping you understand what the interview process is going to look like is also very important. And these are pretty common things that, at least for me, I got into my boot camps. But as I talk to more people, a lot of these things are not provided by these boot camps. And I wonder why. Like, is it like, kind of like, for me, it's like, isn't it the boot camp's job to help set you up for success? But you guys don't want to talk about career phase, which is so important, because most of the time they'll just be like, all right, we taught you the ins and out about UX design. All right, we gave you projects to work on, and that's it. Now go off on your own and create your own case study, figure out what the interview process is like. And I think that's another part where I tell a lot of people to really look in depth to see like what that means, because they may say it's a career phase, but they may not go through the entire thing. And a lot of it you have to work on your own. But if they're really helping you out in that specific part, that's another game changer that I think is also very valuable and important.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes sense. So Vanetta has a question. How do you feel about someone with a degree who wants to do a boot camp or course to supplement their knowledge, especially if they aren't doing the UX designer role currently, but an adjacent role, and they want to brush up on their skills? You know, it's pretty specific, but it's yeah, basically someone that already has degree, but wants to do a boot camp, kind of supplement it, and doing like a tangential role, seems like it.
Yeah, I think, yeah, if you already have a degree, and I'm going to assume it's a non-design degree, and you're wanting to do a boot camp to supplement your knowledge. And I mean, honestly, I think like, oh, it's in UX design. Thank you for answering. So you have a degree in UX design, but you want to do a boot camp to supplement your knowledge. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because I kind of did the same thing as well. So I say about a year ago, I did sign up for a UX bootcamp program that I felt was like a very low commitment in terms of the money and the time. It was a boot camp specifically around video games. UX, it was a UX boot camp specifically within the video game industry. And I decided to take that just because I was very curious about it. I wanted to learn from it as well. And I obviously went into that boot camp not really expecting to learn a whole lot specifically. Like I didn't think that this boot camp was going to be a game changer that would really help me convert. But at the end of the day, I just assumed that, hey, they would provide me with knowledge that, you know, I don't really know. And which I think I definitely got a lot out of the boot camp specifically. And for me, it was a good supplemental knowledge of paying, you know, a small little amount to continue learning on the side, which I thought was very cool. And yeah, I don't see why not, right? Like if you have the time to do a part-time boot camp, do it. But I guess the question would be, you know, why are you going back to a boot camp, right? Is there a specific thing that this boot camp is teaching that maybe you didn't get, you know, within your design degree? Like, are they providing a really cool project for you to work on that's within your realms of passion and interest specifically? But it's all, yeah, I say it's very dependent. But again, I've done a boot camp even as a UX designer just to continue my knowledge. So I definitely would encourage that as well, depending on your time and commitment.
Awesome. Thank you, Wesley. Vanetta, great questions. Yeah, feel free to keep those questions coming, and yeah, feel free to share more in the chat if you know what you loved so far, any biggest takeaways so far. Here's something else that I want to ask you about. Do you think employers actually care which bootcamp one went to?
Do they care about which bootcamp? Possibly. So like, for example, the General Assembly one, I think it's a pretty well-known company, a bootcamp company specifically. And it's also very dependent. Like, let's just say I'm a UX manager, right? And I hired a boot camp graduate 2 years ago, and I really liked what that person had to bring to the table. I was like, oh my gosh, like you're like a full-fledged UX designer. I'm going to assume that this boot camp taught you really well. So let's say a couple years down the line, I'm looking for another UX designer. And I may look at that specific boot camp again in terms of their pool of people. So I think there's definitely a lot of recognition and slight prestigious that may come into play specifically. But right now, in the state of where we're at today, with there being so many different boot camps, I think it's gotten to a point where, honestly, I feel like a lot of people look at boot camps and it's kind of a bad taste in their mouth today, I would say. Just because I think with a lot of boot camps today, they don't really set people up for success as well as they did before. So I feel like there is a bit of a downgrade within the boot camp. And people see it a little bit as they look through boot camp graduate portfolio, the case studies, and it's not where it should be. It kind of has built a little bit of reputation. I think with a lot of these bigger companies, like the tech companies that are what we call the FANG companies, rumor has it like a while back ago that, if they ever saw someone apply for their roles and they saw that you were coming from a boot camp, they wouldn't even look at you. They would toss you in the trash. Again, rumors. I don't know if that's true or not. And I don't know how all these other boot camps, all the other companies view the boot camp. But again, it's also very dependent on the name, if they've heard about it, and if they've worked with people who came from it. Maybe then in that sense, they maybe have a better taste in their mouth specifically. But I guess at the end of the day, the boot camp isn't offering you like that degree, right? Like it doesn't matter. Like what really matters that comes out of that boot camp is the case study, right? And your knowledge about UX design, and then specifically like really showcasing the hard skill and then the soft skills specifically. Like, because at the end of the day, they're gonna be like, okay, another bootcamp student, but they may look at your case study and they look at it and they're like, wow, this person actually has a really good case study. It's a lot different from a lot of these other bootcamp students. We want to talk to this person. And I think that part specifically is dependent on like how you structure that case study, right? And how you differentiate yourself between your other bootcamp people. Because again, at the end of the day, with a lot of these boot camps, I don't know how many boot camp graduates there that are being popped out left and right from these programs. But you may be competing against thousands of other boot camp students, and you have to ask yourself, how am I going to differentiate myself?
Yeah, who may have similar or the same portfolio pieces, right? So it's also, I think that's I don't think there are any, like you think about colleges, right? So some employers, right, they still really care about college, right? And the reason for that is some colleges are extremely difficult to get into. So it's like a good filtering mechanism for them, like an easy filter mechanism. You can work hard, you're very smart, etc. Right? And that's why in terms of boot camps, honestly, in my opinion, I don't think most employers really care which one you went to. They mostly care about your actual portfolio, your case studies, and kind of how you present yourself and what you can show and how you can demonstrate it, right? So kind of going back to what we presented in the beginning, the competencies, right? So what you can show and kind of what candidates you are, because I don't think there are any boot camps that are as competitive as Harvard, for example, right? Or like Carnegie Mellon or something like that, right? And that's why it's it can be big, but it doesn't mean it's actually prestige, right? Because it's not like it's very hard to get into, right? And usually that's what makes these small top universities very popular among employers.
Yeah, you mentioned a good point about, I guess, colleges being competitive. And sometimes I wonder, why aren't these boot camps kind of in the same way, right? Because if I wanted to apply to Harvard, I'm sure that they have a vetting system that I have to go through to make sure that I have the right criteria, the right knowledge, the right mindset and mentality. And I think the boot camp should do the exact same thing with their vetting process. And this is where I think if you're signing up for a boot camp, right, and you go through that initial one-on-one conversation to see if you're a good fit, if they're not vetting you and they're just hear your story, and they're at the end of the call, they're like, all right, you're a great fit, let's sign you up already. I'm a little skeptical with those boot camps because they're just really quick to just get you into the program. Because again, at the end of the day, these boot camps are a business. And I think sadly, to a certain degree, they just want you to sign up and they want your money. And I feel like the boot camps that are taking the time to vet you and also asking you, are you sure you want to do this boot camp? Are you sure this is the right fit for you? I think those are the boot camps that truly care about how you spend your time and your money, instead of some of these other boot camps where there is no vetting process and they'll just take in whoever, right? And another thing to add on top of that is, I feel like that's how some of these boot camps are when they have like 500 students per cohort, or like 200 or even 100. That to me is very bizarre, because my boot camp, when they were going through the different like the vetting process and deciding how many people are in a cohort, I would say the average was between 15 to 25, and they never went any higher than that. And I think they really cared about wanting to make sure that the classroom size is a decent size enough where people can support each other, they can learn off of each other, and it's not too overwhelming. But if you're in a boot camp that's 100 students, like how are these boot camps making sure that every single student of these 100 people are being taken care of, right? Because you're paying a certain amount of money and you should be taken care of to a certain degree. And that's another question that I had is like, do all these boot camps have enough instructors or mentors to take care of all 100 people, right? If some of these mentors, they're in charge of mentoring 20 bootcamp students, like that's a lot, like on their part. And maybe that probably would lead to a really bad mentoring experience because some of these mentors are burnt out, right? I think that's another set of questions that I ask is like, how much are they, like, what are they showing you to prove that they actually care about you and where you're at, and providing you with the right system, structure, and environment to, put you in the best position to become a UX designer.
Yeah, it's also definitely, I mean, that's something that we learned over time as well with our program, right? Because basically it's important, if it's team-based, team-oriented, you cannot just accept everyone, right? Because if it's kind of self-study, self-paced, somebody sitting in their room doing everything on their own, yeah, that's why it's easy. It's much more scalable for some of these programs, right? Because they just like grow like crazy and have these like 500 people classes and stuff, and then they can accept anyone, right? But if you actually get people to work in a team, if you get them to work with mentors, if you get them to work with clients, that we quickly learn that that's why, like, for example, in our case, we're trying to be pretty selective, in terms of who's admitted, because like one person has like a negative attitude or something like that, it can kind of negatively impact the experience for others. All right, so I have a couple more questions, Wes, and then I want to take a couple more from the audience here and have a couple of additional ones, but then we'll be wrapping up after that. What do you think are, maybe what we haven't covered so far, what do you think are the most common mistakes related to choosing a UX program or UX bootcamp?
Yeah, kind of what I mentioned before is you're not looking at, like, only looking at one or two boot camps where you're not doing enough of the research part to see what other boot camps might be a better fit for you, right? Just kind of, and also just kind of doing that competitive analysis to figure out, yeah, again, like which one is the best for you, right? I think that's one part that people make a mistake when choosing a boot camp. I think another one that kind of goes alongside with that is sometimes I hear people tell me that, hey, my friend did this boot camp, so because my friend did it, I'm going to sign up for the same boot camp. And, let's just say that you have the best judgment and your friend is right and they like the boot camp and they think it's one of the best ones. But I still think it's better for you to get varying different perspectives from different types of people going through that experience. So you can talk to someone who recently finished the program. You can talk to someone who's currently going through the program. Talk to someone who graduated from the program a year or two ago, right? Hear all the different perspectives out, because, someone who has been a UX designer for 4 or 5 years, and if they're well aware of like how people are becoming UX designers today, they may provide you with different set of insights, right? They may tell you that bootcamp is not the best one. And like, I think a part of like reaching out to current UX designers is something that I don't see as often because I think people are just very intimidated by the whole idea of networking, cold messaging someone, which I get. Like it's especially if you're like more introverted and you're not a people person. I can definitely understand like why that's even more scarier. But networking is kind of one of those things where like you have to do it. Like there's at this point where with UX design, where it is today and how saturated it is and how many boot camps there are, like you can't afford not to network. And I think that's another big mistake people are not doing even before choosing the boot camp, right? Because sometimes I feel like people have an idea of what they think boot camp is. And because they think they know what it is and they sign up for a boot camp, pay a specific amount of money, go through the program for 4 months, and then they later find out that, oh my gosh, UX design is not the best fit for me. And I just spent all that time and money, like wasting my time. And I feel like there's a lot of clarity that you could possibly get by talking to people who have been working within the career. They can answer more specific questions about what their day-to-day looks like. What are the actual real challenges that they're going through? What are their honest perspective on boot camp specifically? So there's definitely that part that I feel I wish people did a little bit more in terms of choosing the right boot camps.
Yeah, and definitely. And just to add to that, basically look at the outcome, right? Not the outcome just in terms of alumni success rates, because those can be tricky to calculate exactly. But what are you actually gaining? Like first, again, kind of coming back to that, starting with the end in mind point, right? So first understand like, who is that candidate that employers look at and really think like, wow, I really want to hire this person, right? And are you going to get that from that bootcamp, right? From that place. And then kind of look at all those competencies and to evaluate them. So we have Alina is asking a question. How about those boot camps that claim that they guarantee you that you'll find a job after you finish their boot camp? Are you talking about BeginX, Alina? What do you think about those boot camps, Wesley?
Oh man, I mean, the word guarantee is probably the part where that kind of gets me a little bit. Like, what does that mean for a boot camp to guarantee you? Like, does that mean that you're going to get a job right after? Does it means that you're going to get a job 3 months after? I think honestly speaking, it's a far stretch sometimes. I think what they can tell you more is just the honest data around like how long it's taken their students to find a job, right? Because even when I did my boot camp, I'm pretty sure that they said the same thing about the guarantee part. All 15 classmates of mine who were in the same cohort, we all did get a job. So technically they did guarantee, I guess, to a certain degree, but it took all of us different time period in terms of getting a full-time job. I had a classmate who got a job right after she finished the program because she got paired with a really great mentor who was located in the same city as her and then had a junior UX position, which is great for her. It took me 3 months. I had another classmate, it took her an entire year to finally land a full-time job. And I think that's just kind of the varying facts. That's also very important that maybe boot camps are not fully sharing specifically. I guess the guarantee part is that if some of these boot camps are like, hey, if you don't get a job 3 months after you finish this boot camp, we will give you a free refund back. I think that's very nice for them to do. And I would say that's the part where if they're not fulfilling their promises, guaranteeing you a job, then honestly, the boot camp should completely refund you back, right? And I know there are boot camps like that, which is, again, I think if that's another big factor, that if they were willing to do that, they're being very genuine about, hey, we don't want to waste your time and we want to make sure that you learn the right thing. But if it just doesn't turn out, we'll give you your money back. I think that's pretty nice of them to do that in that sense. So that's kind of how I'll answer this specific question.
Thank you, Wesley. Yeah, I agree with you. It's I think guaranteeing a job is like, if they actually say we guarantee you a job, that's kind of weird to say, right? Because you cannot guarantee a job, right? Because I mean, it depends on the person quite a bit and what they do, right? And what they take away. But that said, and that's what we do actually, is the money back guarantee, right? So basically that's taking a risk and saying, okay, we train you, we help you build yourself up and do all these things. and then you follow the guidelines, and if you're still not successful, then you get your money back, right? So I think that's fair, and that's why we implemented that part, right? And I think it also kind of gives confidence, and honestly, it really helped us, right? It really forced us to focus in designing the product that actually gets people results, because if it doesn't, then we're at a disadvantage, right? And everyone loses, right? So it's so hopefully that clarifies that question a little bit. All right, so Wesley, if we were to kind of summarize what we covered so far, I'll have to run in a couple of minutes, but into kind of like step by step and key things that we discussed that are like crucial when selecting a boot camp, right? So here's what I have so far from my own notes here, right? So case studies, right? This is like one of the most crucial things that you will get is your case studies for your portfolios, right? And for a portfolio, and real client case study ideally, or at least more unique case studies, right? They're in the last cookie cutter that you don't have like 100 other or 1,000 other people have exactly the same thing, right? That's actually feature stakeholder interaction or some constraints, etc. Right? And that's basically the main reason we do that stuff. Next one is soft skills. Structure helps a lot of people, and deadlines. Live, ideally, if that's important to you, right? So when you have live interaction with mentors or with instructor, etc., and support, right? So do you have anything else to add in terms of kind of creating this summary framework of what is important?
Yeah, I think one thing I'll add is, I guess the case study that you do get out of the boot camp, that's technically the degree that you should be receiving, right? Because that's going to be the best thing that you can use to show, hey, here's what I learned at this boot camp. Here's how I'm showing my UX design process, and here's how I can prove that I am a UX designer. So again, that's the most important key part that you should be getting out of the boot camp. In terms of the way that they teach you the knowledge, right? Like, how are you taking all that and then putting it into this case study? So I think, and then also like in terms of the way that they're differentiating the boot camps of the case studies that they're going to, or the projects that you're working on, is also a very key thing. One quick thing I'll add is that I've heard that some of these boot camps will, I guess, tell you to go look for a client or work on a project that you enjoy, which I think I like that in terms of flexibility, because you can particularly work with a specific client that you might like. But I also think to a certain degree that some of these boot camps should be the ones going out and looking for the clients and providing that for you specifically. And again, it's a matter of like, paying you guys this money. Like, where's the support? Where's the help? Why are you forcing me to go out and find clients? That's kind of a little bit weird for me specifically. But yeah, everything else in terms of what you're saying, Michael, I would say it's pretty spot on.
Thank you, Weston. Yeah, that's and just to let our audience know, right? So if you guys have more questions, feel free to add those. Last chance. We'll be wrapping up in a couple of minutes. Meanwhile, I also want to quickly take a question from Zena. Have you heard about any specific boot camps in your professional network? So just to I'll first like try to address that a little bit, and then I also want to see if you have any additional input. So Zena, what I would do, right? I would just basically put in like top 10 or top UX boot camps, right? You'll probably get like 3 articles or so, and you'll get like the most common, the most popular ones. But again, I would not evaluate them based on brand or how many people they have, right? It's an indicator, yes, definitely. It can be useful, but evaluate an outcome and evaluate them on criteria, on the competencies and what you gain from them, right? You can have all these, like, to just name a few, there are all these like big brands like Flatiron School, or that one is more full-time, or they have Flex program, I think, as well, or Design Lab, Springboard, Career Foundry, lots of different options. And but definitely just do your homework and evaluate like the framework that we kind of just put together and described, or some other one, right, in terms of what you're actually gaining from it. And of course, I mean, we run the program. I'll tell you guys about it in a minute as well. For those who might be a fit, it could be a great opportunity. So Wes, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, Michael, like what you said, I think there's definitely a lot of Googling that you can do to see what's out there specifically. The only thing that I think kind of comes up to mind is that when you're like typing in the top 10 boot camps that are available, I think the careful part that I would be concerned about is with some of these websites, it's all very dependent on how much these boot camps are putting towards their marketing a little bit. Because, honestly, if some of these boot camps had that big of a marketing budget, they can essentially force these websites to tell them that they're the number one thing, right? I think there are some like bootcamp review sites where it will allow people to leave their bootcamp experience reviews on there. I think that's like a really cool section to have and to read through specifically. And, again, this might be me being a little bit more pessimistic, but sometimes they may filter out all the bad ones that might not be on there. And so maybe you can look for like the 3-star ones, right? Maybe they provide like the most honest perspective about these boot camps. And then, if they leave their name behind, that's another great way for you to reach out to that person and find them on LinkedIn and shoot them a message specifically. But yeah, just like look at, see all the different boot camps that there are, but just be careful. And again, this is why I stress the whole part about reaching out to someone who actually went to the boot camp and just confirming some of these things that you're seeing based off of your own research and the things that you're seeing on the websites.
Yeah, definitely. You'll see beginners only on like 2 listings, and they're actually, both of them are random. We didn't like try to like incentivize them or anything like that, right? So it's, if you're a multi-million funded venture capital funded company, then it can be definitely a little bit easier to get into more places. So I want to briefly address Celia's question that she asked quite a while ago. It's not about bootcamp specifically, but she was talking about the UX career roadmap that we covered. What's the average length for all these different phases? So Celia, this can vary, right? It depends on, 1, if you do it full-time or part-time, right? And 2, how much effort basically you put in, right? So someone can transition like as fast as, I think Weston mentioned in his case, the bootcamp itself was like 3 months and then 3-month job search, 6 months full-time, right? That's that can be done. It's a great result. I think it's quite a few people actually do not get there in 6 months, mostly because of the job search phase, because it often takes much longer than people actually think. If it's part-time, it can be anywhere between typically, say, 7 months shortest, 8 months maybe total, if you like, and up to like a couple of years, right? It really depends on you. It really depends on how much effort you put in, how much guidance you have, etc. Want to add to that anything, Wesley?
I think if we're talking specifically about the career phase, I would say it just definitely varies, right? I think it gets to a point where ideally you probably should have 2 case studies ready for the interview process. I specifically have only 1. I would not recommend that, right? Unless it's a really damn good case study, then maybe you can keep with the 1 specifically. And also I think the one other part is how many different iterations have you gone with your case study? That includes going through different feedbacks, showing that to other experienced UX designers. Like, I think the more rounds that you do, the more finite your case study will be and the more better it will get. So I think after a certain point where you feel like you're at a very comfortable stage, then go out there, apply, see how other people are reacting to it. And if you need more time, then continue to work on your case studies and continue to grow. But yeah, it's hard to put an average length of time because it's just so different for everybody. And I know that's very frustrating for people to hear, but that's just the honest truth.
And when I said last chance for questions, so I had a couple more come in, so we'll take one more. So Vanetta is asking, what's the most important thing to show in your portfolio as far as hard skills? Because I know we didn't spend as much time because it's much more commonly addressed in many places, right? There's comprehensive user flow, clickable prototype, or do you, so Wesley, just to kind of paraphrase that, do you think there's something that is more important? Because in my opinion, I think it's basically just showing the, a few key phases of the process, maybe the whole UX process, right? But what do you think?
Yeah, it's hard. I feel like showing as much of how you came up with the final product is probably important to show. So, the person mentions a user flow, right? I think that's very important. I think like having sitemap is very important. Showing the IA the information architecture of your product or your solution is also very important because it just kind of helps to show like, how, where your mind is at and how you start to just put these things onto an actual mirror board or an actual Figma. And that also just shows like how you're able to process all these different information and come up with something a little bit more concise, and showing the framework or the skeleton of the product is very valuable to share, particularly within your case study. The clickable prototype, yeah, I think it's a great thing to share. I know some people who will put that clickable prototype at the very top of their case study. I personally do not recommend that because you're just showing the final product, and you're not, I feel like it's so important to answer the question why or how you got to the final product before you just show what's like nice and pretty specifically. So that's kind of a quick suggestion for a lot of people is, yeah, like take them through the journey of your case study, answer all the questions in terms of, how you went from the discovery to the research, to the information architecture, to the wireframing and concepting. Like, take them onto that journey and don't shortcut them to that final product, because I feel like you're not telling a story efficiently that way. And again, it's just kind of more of a distraction where you're just trying to show all the pretty things first, and then you don't want to show them the entire process in terms of how you got to that point. So I think that's also a very valuable thing to mention as well.
Awesome. Wesley, thank you. And by the way, if we did not get to any of the questions, feel free to just email and reach out to us. And it's hello@beginnex.com. And yeah, we'll try to either just try to answer it, or maybe Wesley could also answer, if he could answer some of those potentially. So we'll see. Yeah, so thank you for asking so many wonderful questions. We appreciate it. So Wesley, thank you so much. This was awesome. Hope you guys enjoyed the events, got some great tips on how you can select the best bootcamp for yourself. So as promised, right, so people often ask us about our own program, right? So as promised, let me also quickly tell you about the program that we're running, since it may be a great opportunity for some of you, not just for building amazing real clients portfolios, but also to actually get that crucial career prep necessary to land the UX job. And by the way, right, so let me just start who this is for, right? Because it's not for you. I mean, you guys don't have to stick around for this. I'll probably spend like a minute or so and tell you a little bit about it. The program is basically best fit for people who know UX basics or come from a design, research, creative, tech related background and look to transition into UX in one of the most effective and affordable ways, and without quitting their current jobs, right? So we're also pretty selective, probably not as selective as Harvard, but try to be pretty selective and look for motivated and committed team players. So if you're one of those folks and you're looking to transition, we'll give you basically spend about a minute to tell you a little bit more about it, right? So BeginX is a part-time UX career accelerator program with real mission-driven client projects designed to help people transition into UX without quitting their jobs, right? So we ran multiple cohorts, helped probably over 140 people or so transition into UX, and alumni of the program have been hired by companies like SiriusXM, Coach, Google, ABC News, Meta, JP Morgan, many others. So recently we have also been ranked by SwitchUp, as I mentioned earlier, as their best UX program. The advisors and mentors are also UX practitioners from companies like Google, IDEO, The Economist, etc. What you gain from completing the program is you build not just the hard skills, but the critical softer skills, like and real experience with a robust portfolio, and then expand your professional network and basically get ready to land the UX role. And in fact, as mentioned earlier, because our grads have done so well, we also offer a money back guarantee, not a job guarantee, money back guarantee. So you either land the UX role or you get your tuition back, plus actually an extra $300 on top of that. So if it sounds like you may be a good candidate, you can learn more at beginnex.com. The next start date is May 23rd, so this month. And our cohorts are quite small and fill up quickly. So if you're interested, act soon sometime. Also, a special gift for anyone who attended this event, you guys will be able to get a $400 tuition credit if you're accepted into the program. So to claim the credit, what you need to do is by tomorrow, so by this, what's tomorrow? Friday, by this Friday, go to the website and request no commitment career transition consultation, or just get program info or just apply, right? And by the way, these consultations are designed to be not just some quick program pitch, but they actually provide an opportunity for you to learn about UX career transition best practices and pitfalls to avoid, to get guidance and personalized advice, ask questions about your own career switch and how the program can actually help you and see if you may be a good fit for it, right? So with that said, we frequently run different types of events, right? So we'll keep you guys updated about upcoming events and share resources via our newsletter that is usually sent every few weeks or so. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And thank you to our wonderful guest speaker for taking his time and to join us and provide all the valuable insights. It was a huge pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, thank you, Michael, and thank you, Beginnix, for having me. If you have any more questions, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. We'll love to answer more questions through there. Just let me know that you came from this call so that I know. And then also a quick shameless plug. If you're looking for more information around UX design, please check out my YouTube channel where I do talk more about my UX journey, especially as a bootcamp graduate and my current journey now as a UX designer.
Awesome. Yeah, that was actually my next question for you, Wesley. Like, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you, right? So is it your YouTube channel? That's like the best place to find you. I know you have some really awesome video. Really love those. And, really great stuff. So is that the best place to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I say on YouTube, or you can just reach out more directly through LinkedIn as well. And just type in my name, Wesley Hong. You should be able to find me on there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
All right. See you.
Everyone have a good one.